Hello. Okay, so today I actually read Matthew chapter 6 and 7. Okay, so um, today I'm going to be doing Matthew 7 14. So that is, I'm just going to start here. So I have entering the kingdom. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the road broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who will go through it. How narrow is the gate and difficult the road that leads to life, and few find it. So basically, I'm seeing like entering the kingdom. I guess what I'm finding is that um, a lot of the Bible can be, symbolic and literal. So, like, a lot of the things can mean multiple things, if that makes sense. So entering the kingdom, so like basically I have how narrow is the gate and difficult the road that leads to life, and few find it. So life is, you know, God's path and happiness and, you know, living a fulfilling life that is led by God. I think a lot of times life is just like, okay, the day to day hustle and bustle and work to, how people say you work to live and then you die. That's not life, right? Um, well, it's a reality, but like it's what I'm getting from this is like God's God's definition of life is being a child of God and helping others and, learning the word and living the word and being holy and being, that of goodness, right? And that of faith. So very few, very few find it. So very few find the road that leads to life. So if very few find it, very few enter the kingdom. So the gate is wide and the narrow broad that leads to destruction. So I also see this as kind of like, you know how they say, what do they say? Like kind of like follow the leader in a sense. So like, like a herd of kind of like you follow the footsteps of others, right? We usually do that. So like if your parents say, this is what we do. We go to college. We go to this specific college. I'm thinking like these families who were like, you go to Spelman, and I went to Spelman, and you go to Spelman, and it goes, and it's like generational, right? So think of it like we all go to. So the idea of life is interesting because the life that society tells us that we have to live is to go to school, go to college, work, 9 to 5, have Saturday and Sunday off, and then, retire and then pass away. Okay. And that's not a fulfilling version of life. And that's what we're societally meant to do. And so if that's the case, then most of us, a lot of us, are going to be on the wide, broad road that leads to destruction, leads to unhappiness, leads to lack of fulfillment, leads to the road away from God, away from faith, right? And so the road to life, right? It leads to the road of societal life, okay? I always like to think about really where we were as a, as civilization. I always used to say this like 400 years ago, where there were no jobs. There were just, hey, you gather food, maybe you have a farm, you just travel place to place, protect yourself. And it's like we didn't have, majors in college. We didn't have, careers and all these things. I mean, yes, we had them, but they weren't so society based. So even if you think about it, it seems like there's less entrepreneur. I mean, there's less entrepreneurs than there are employees, because the road is narrow and it's difficult, right? But it leads to freedom, and it breaks the monotony, and it breaks the society view of life, and few find it, right? So I guess if you take in that sense, okay, if you take that, and again, I'm kind of brainstorming through this, but like, if you take that, I'm taking that and kind of like putting it to Matthew 7:14, in the sense of the entering the kingdom and having a life, God's version of a life, not society's and man's version of a life, is narrow, as you enter through the narrow gate. And there aren't many who go through it, and it's difficult. The road is difficult, but it leads to life, but very few find it. So in the sense of entrepreneurship and employees, the road to life, God's version of life, not society or man's version of life, it's difficult. You have to believe in God, know the word, know the word, keep your faith, practice your faith, share your faith, walk in your faith, and that's difficult to do, right? With all the things that we have. And on top of that, you're not going to have the support that you have, in the sense of you're not going to have support from man, which is also not God's version of what life is. And that actually ties into the how to fast. Whenever you fast, don't be gloomy like the hypocrites, for they make their faces unattractive so that their fasting is obvious to people. Truly, I tell you, they have their reward. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that your fasting isn't obvious to others, but to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So instead of attention seeking, instead of having your idea and version of life that is rooted in man, the only support that you need is in secret, in a sense, but it's not in secret, but it's from God. And you're rewarded in secret versus, it's like delayed gratification versus instant gratification, which is from man. So basically what I'm getting is that, we have to learn God's version of life, not man's version of life. And when we do that, we start the process of entering the kingdom versus continuing to go with the fray, continuing to go with what everyone else is doing, which is leading to destruction, and it's leading to the road that never leads to God's version of life. And it seems like it is because we have all those, we're attention seeking. We want our rewards to be told to us by hypocrites, by like our friends and family. We want that instant gratification. But once we begin the journey to God's kingdom, the journey to God's version of what life is, we begin the process of finding the road to Him. So that is what I got for Matthew 7:14. I'm sure I'm going to read it over and over and over and over, and I'm sure I will have different understandings and a better understanding. But yeah, that is just what I got. So yeah, thank you for watching.